Jamal Carter walked the hallways of Westwood High with a weight upon his shoulders that felt heavier than any backpack could carry. Every step was a reminder of the whispers that snaked around him, the pointed stares that seemed to burrow into his skin, and the laughter that echoed like a haunting melody meant only for him. He knew why they laughed, why Bradley Miller, the so-called king of the school, had chosen him as his target. In a school where appearances mattered, Jamal was a perfect mark, a timid, skinny boy, an easy target for cruel jokes and even crueler actions. Each day, the sun slid through the clouds while Jamal's heart sank into the pit of his stomach. As 8 a.m. rolled around, Jamal felt as though he were gearing up for a war without weapons but full of verbal assaults and social barbs. Bradley was always the first to strike, his friends trailing behind like hyenas waiting for a chance to pounce on the fallen prey. Jamal had learned to let the insults bounce off him, refused to react. But inside, the fire of anger flickered, waiting to ignite. "Hey, Jamal." Bradley called to him, sleek and confident. "Still hiding in those books? Maybe you should write a book about how to be a loser." That familiar sting gripped Jamal's chest, but he kept his head down. He had been taught that silence was strength, that the real fight was against the urge to retaliate. Yet part of him burned to respond, to show Bradley that he wasn't as weak as he seemed. Alas, he stayed silent, the words strangling in his throat, morphing into the shadows that blanketed his spirit. As Jamal made his way to the library, he sought refuge among the shelves, where the spines of books offered more comfort than any friend ever could. Here, between the pages, he found solace, a world where he wasn't defined by the color of his skin or the taunts thrown his way. He dug deep into stories filled with heroes and legends who fought back against the odds. Jamal longed to be one of them. But how? Suddenly, the door swung open, and Bradley sauntered in, flanked by Ryan and Kyle. "Look who I found," he exclaimed, his smile venomous. The library nerd. "What are you reading today?" "How to Make Yourself Invisible." Jamal's heart raced. He felt the heat bubble up inside him, threatening to spill over. But he remembered Sensei Kobayashi's lessons, patience and control. Instead of breaking his silence, he turned away, staring at the pages before him, though they no longer held meaning. Bradley approached, knocking a stack of books to the floor, launching laughter from his entourage. "Oops. Didn't see those there, Jamal. Maybe you should keep your things locked up. Wouldn't want those to be stolen, like your lunch yesterday." Jamal's heart quickened as he knelt to pick the books up, his hands trembling but trying to maintain composure. Each mocking laugh from his so-called classmates pierced through him like shards of glass. Their amusement hung heavy in the air above, a fog of cruelty he felt suffocatingly close. "Ryan, why don't you just fight back, Jamal? Or are you too scared?" The question hung there, a dare disguised as a taunt. Jamal's throat went dry, fear intertwined with the remnants of anger swirling inside him. He never wanted to fight, he just wanted it all to stop. The moments when he wished to rise up burned in his mind, but he could never bring himself to act on those thoughts. Eventually, the trio drifted out, laughter fading like a chilling memory. Jamal sat on the cold floor, books now gathered in his lap, yet he felt emptier than before. Why was fear still holding him captive? Why couldn't he just be free like the heroes he read about? That night, as he cycled past the brightly lit streets, another reality loomed. The dojo, painted in vibrant colors, was calling him. Kobayashi's martial arts academy stood on the corner of Derry Lane, a beacon of hope amidst his turmoil. Jamal threw his bike down and quickly made his way inside. The familiar scent of sweat and old wood enveloped him, easing the burden on his shoulders. "Good evening, Jamal." Sensei Kobayashi greeted him with a warm nod. "Sensei," Jamal replied, a familiar feeling of peace washing over him like a warm blanket. He moved towards the training mats, his worries receding as he became immersed in the routine of katas, the movements that defined him. As he punched and kicked, each movement unleashed the bottled-up emotions from earlier. The grunts, the focus, the relentless practice, it was all a conduit for his frustration. Every strike against the air was a rejection of the bullying, of the fear that had paralyzed him. However, halfway through the session, Sensei Kobayashi's voice broke through the rhythmic sound of his movements. "Jamal, strength doesn't just come from your fists. It comes from within. Remember that." Those words hung in the air. It wasn't physical strength that Jamal needed, it was the courage to face his fears. Igniting a flicker, Jamal realized he was training not just his body but his spirit. Yet, the thought of confronting Bradley again sent shivers down his spine. But tonight would be different. As he left the dojo, a familiar flame of determination ignited within him. Jamal no longer wanted to be just a bystander in his own life. He would take control. Little did he know, the upcoming days would test every ounce of resolve he had built. And soon, Jamal's journey from shadow to strength would ignite something much larger than the school, a movement that would change everything. As Jamal looked up at the stars flickering like distant hopes, he whispered to himself, "I am ready." Ready to reclaim not just his power but to inspire others, beacons of light leaving shadows behind. As Jamal looked up at the stars flickering like distant hopes, he whispered to himself, "I am ready." Ready to reclaim not just his power but to inspire others, beacons of light leaving shadows behind. The days that followed were filled with an energy Jamal had never known. Each morning, before the sun rose, he found himself back at the dojo, embracing the early hours like a newfound ritual. He trained even harder, focusing not just on the techniques that had become second nature, but on the philosophy behind them. He learned that martial arts weren't just about physical skill, they were about finding strength in the face of adversity. But despite his determination, the weight of doubt lingered. What if the courage he found didn't translate beyond the dojo? What if Bradley continued his reign of terror, undeterred by Jamal's newfound confidence? These questions gnawed at him, but he pushed them aside, each breath igniting the resolve within him. Then came the day of reckoning. As Jamal entered Westwood High, a sense of expectation filled the hallways. Something had shifted. Rumors swirled like the mist from an early morning fog. Students whispered in hushed tones, their glances directed at him, some filled with admiration, others with uncertainty. But among them was Bradley, flanked by his loyal followers, a familiar smug grin spread across his face. Jamal's heart raced. He had faced his fears in the dojo, but this was the real world. This was the moment that could either lift him or plunge him back into the shadows. "Look who it is," Bradley sneered as Jamal approached his locker. "The little fighter. Ready for another embarrassing round today." His friends snickered, knowing their leader's tactics all too well. Jamal clutched his books tightly, the earlier determination flashing through him. "I'm not scared of you anymore, Bradley," he said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his heart. For a moment, surprise flickered in Bradley's eyes. But before he could respond, Jamal continued, "This ends today." At that, the murmurs escalated. Students paused, intrigued. They had never seen Jamal speak back, let alone confront Bradley so boldly. Jamal could feel the tension in the air. It crackled like electricity. "Ends? You're delusional," Bradley scoffed, stepping forward as if to intimidate. "You really think those fancy moves you've been practicing will save you? This is my territory." The boldness of Bradley's words and bravado only fueled Jamal. He remembered the lessons of focus and self-control as he stood firm, letting the fire inside him ignite. "This isn't just about me," he said, his voice rising, catching the attention of more students who were drifting into the scene. "It's about anyone who's ever felt small or weak or afraid. No one should have to feel that way." The hall fell silent, anticipation humming in the space. Could it be? Had Jamal really said that? Many had witnessed the bullying, yet no one dared to speak up before. Now, he was challenging not just Bradley, but the very culture of silence that had allowed the bullying to persist. Bradley's laughter rang out, bitter and icy. "You think you can start a rebellion by using some silly words? You think that will make me go away?" His eyes narrowed, and Jamal felt the weight of Bradley's accusation, but there was something different about this time. "Maybe I can't do it alone," Jamal said, casting his gaze around the crowd that had gathered, their eyes wide with curiosity. "But if I start here, maybe others will join. We need to stand together." That was enough. A ripple of encouragement began to pulse through the students. Small murmurs, supportive nods, and whispers of agreement spread like wildfire. Jamal felt the surge of energy, a force ready to challenge the status quo. "Look at them," Bradley hissed, frustration creeping into his voice. "They'll never back you. You're just a nobody." But Jamal took a step closer, allowing that fire within him to forge a new path, not from anger or resentment, but from hope and determination. "I am somebody," he declared, feeling the truth of it resonate within him. "And together, we'll bring change." For the first time, Jamal saw the reflection of himself in the eyes of his peers, no longer a target, but a symbol of bravery. And as the crowd began to swell around him, murmurings of agreement and cheers filling the air, Jamal realized he had ignited something much larger than himself. He had sparked a movement. "Let's show them we're stronger together," he shouted, his voice lifting above the murmurs. The students around him began to respond, their voices rising in encouragement. But Bradley, feeling the slip of control, clenched his fists in absolute fury and then, without warning, charged forward, intending to crush Jamal's burgeoning courage with brute force. The crowd gasped, a collective breath held in anticipation of the impending clash. Just then, Ryan and Kyle exchanged glances, caught between their loyalty to Bradley and the momentum of Jamal's plea. Caught on the precipice of upheaval, they hesitated. And that hesitation made all the difference. In an impulsive act, Ryan stepped in front of Bradley, placing a hand on his chest. "Wait," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Maybe this isn't worth it anymore, man. They are right. We shouldn't be bullying." "What?" Bradley's voice thundered, incredulous. "You can't be serious." The hesitation in Ryan's eyes spread like a contagion through the onlookers, and suddenly, Kyle spoke up too. "Maybe we should just leave him alone. We have enough to deal with ourselves." The stir of discontent began to grow. Students who had once seen Bradley as invincible whispered encouragement. Jamal stood firm, heart racing as he watched this inner conflict play out. Bradley, his face darkening, looked even more furious, realizing he was losing not only control over Jamal, but also over his own followers. "You're all turning on me," he spluttered, disbelief coursing through his voice. "You wouldn't dare." But dare they did. Jamal's courage had sparked a change, and the power dynamics began to shift before his eyes. "You can't keep controlling us with fear, Bradley," Jamal said, regaining his voice as the tension mounted. "We don't need to put anyone down to feel strong. We're better than that, and deep down, you know it." Bradley's expression wavered, and for the first time, the facade of his confidence cracked. In that moment, he seemed smaller, more fragile, and exposed. Jamal knew he was walking a tightrope, too much pressure, and this could explode. But as long as he held his ground, others would feel encouraged to do the same. Just then, Sarah, who had remained silent in the shadows for far too long, stepped forward, her voice resolute. "You've bullied people for too long, Bradley. It's time for this to stop." The crowd nodded in agreement, inches from erupting into an unstoppable wave. It was contagious. Jamal's courage set something free within them. With one last attempt at defiance, Bradley glared at Jamal, his bravado dwindling. "You'll regret this, Carter," he warned, the bravado slipping away like sand through his fingers. "You think just because I'm losing my followers you'll win? You think it's over." "I don't think it's just beginning," Jamal replied, his voice steady. "Not for me, and not for anyone who's tired of your endless reign." And with that, Bradley stormed away, leaving a silence in his wake. Not the silence of fear, but the quiet after a storm, filled with the promise of change. Students hesitated, barely realizing they stood stronger together than they ever had apart. In that space, Jamal felt it, a swell of hope, an unbreakable bond beginning to form. He had harnessed his fear and transformed it into resilience. And as the students began to disperse, excitement buzzed in the air, a collective newfound strength settling within them. Maybe this is how we create change, Jamal thought, heart pounding. The path ahead was uncertain, but he was no longer alone. From that moment on, every small victory felt like a step forward in a much larger battle, a battle against not just bullying, but against the stigma that had lingered for too long. Jamal knew that the fight wasn't over, but as he walked through those halls that afternoon, he felt the change taking root deep within the walls of Westwood High. He had become the hero he always wanted to be, not through violence or aggression, but with steel in his heart and support from those around him who were finally brave enough to stand up alongside him. He had become the hero he always wanted to be, not through violence or aggression, but with steel in his heart and support from those around him who were finally brave enough to stand up alongside him. The following weeks unfolded with an energy that pulsed vibrantly through the hallways of Westwood High. Jamal felt a change simmer in the air, like the anticipation before a storm. Students who had once shied away from conflict began to find their voices. They began to speak out, not only against Bradley, but against the culture of bullying that had permeated their school. Jamal's presence became a rallying point. During lunch, whispers of "Did you see how he stood up to Bradley?" spread as easily as wildfire. As he sat with his friends, Trey, Lena, Malik, and even Sarah, he recognized the camaraderie forged in shared struggles. They no longer avoided each other in the hallways, and together they began to forge an unbreakable circle of support. One afternoon, while gathered in a corner of the cafeteria, Malik leaned forward, enthusiasm lighting up his eyes. "I want to start a group, like a self-defense club or something. If we can all learn to fight back, not just physically but in other ways too, we can help each other." Jamal's heart swelled with pride. "That's a great idea. But let's also talk about confronting bullies in a peaceful way, like how we challenge Bradley. We need to use our voices." The others nodded, excitement reverberating through the group, each person inspired by the positive changes they now witnessed. They began brainstorming ideas, flipping through notebooks filled with notes and sketches, plotting a path toward empowerment. However, amidst this newfound unity, Jamal couldn't shake the unease nagging at the back of his mind. He could see Bradley lurking in the shadows, his anger simmering just below the surface like a pot about to boil over. It was only a matter of time before he retaliated, and Jamal worried how that might manifest. One sunny afternoon, during gym class, that tension escalated. The teacher had sent everyone outside for a game of soccer, and the atmosphere buzzed with laughter and shouts as students kicked the ball back and forth. Jamal played with heart, laughter spilling from his lips as he joined in the camaraderie. But as the game unfolded, Jamal noticed Bradley standing at the edge of the field, arms crossed, eyes dark with anger. He was glaring, watching, waiting. The moment Jamal caught sight of him, an icy shiver danced down his spine. Unexpectedly, he felt a surge of adrenaline, his instinct warning him that something was about to change. In a fleeting instant, Bradley charged onto the field, his eyes locked on Jamal. "Hey, everyone, watch this," he shouted, the manic energy erupting from him. Before Jamal could react, Bradley sprinted forward, his eyes wild with rage, and kicked the soccer ball straight towards him with a ferocity that echoed with malice. The ball careened off course, hitting Jamal squarely in the chest, knocking him back into the grass. Laughter erupted from a handful of students who had followed him, and it quickly spread like wildfire, the laughter morphing into jeering taunts. "Looks like you can't dodge a ball, Jamal," Bradley shouted, masking his aggression with bravado. "Maybe you don't belong on the field or in this school." Jamal's heart raced, not from embarrassment, but from a familiar fire igniting within him. He stumbled to his feet, clenched fists ready to face whatever tide Bradley sought to unleash. "Enough." Jamal's voice boomed, his words cutting through the laughter that had once engulfed him. "This has gone on long enough." He stepped forward, the grass crunching beneath his feet, feeling the eyes of both friends and foes upon him. A hush fell over the students, the murmurs fading into anticipation as they watched the confrontation unfold. Bradley softened his pose for a moment, surprise flickering through his gaze. "You want to fight back again, Carter? Still think you can take me?" "I don't want to fight you, Bradley," Jamal replied, sincerity filling his voice. "I want to challenge you to think about why you feel the need to bully others. What makes you so afraid?" Bradley flinched, anger lashing in his eyes. "Afraid? You think I'm afraid of you?" The wind rustled through the crowd, and Jamal felt their breaths hold tightly, a hypnotic silence growing. "Yes," Jamal said with unwavering strength. "I think you're terrified of losing control. You see us standing together, and it scares you because your power comes from our fear." The firmness of Jamal's words echoed around the field, and students began to shift, murmuring hesitantly in agreement. Jamal hadn't focused solely on physical strength. He was turning the tide of emotional resilience into a weapon that could dismantle Bradley's facade. For a moment, Bradley faltered, his bravado cracking, momentarily allowing doubt to seep into his eyes. You think you can just keep preaching your nonsense, and it'll change everything. It's not nonsense, Jamal answered, stepping closer, his heart pounding. This was not just a fight, this was a battle for change. It's real. Standing together against bullying means we say enough is enough. You're not just hurting me, you're hurting yourself too. Why do you think that gives you strength? The crowd began to hum with energy, students edging closer, feeding off Jamal's courage. Their energy was contagious, and he suddenly felt capable of something bigger, something transformative. In that moment of hesitation, Jamal saw it, fear flickering in Bradley's eyes. It was a desperation he had never been able to recognize before. Jamal paused, feeling regret tugging at him. He didn't want to expose this vulnerability, but that was part of the struggle. Bradley, I believe you can change. You don't need to be this person, Jamal implored, desperation mixed with hope spilling from his heart. You have the chance to be better. Barbs of ridicule and anger fizzed in the air, and as if spurred by unseen forces, Bradley erupted. You're telling me to be a better person? You think I care what you say? A flicker of rage erupted within him, and with a primal shout, he lunged forward, aiming to shove Jamal back. Jamal instinctively moved to dodge, feeling the adrenaline surging through his veins, but there was no anger in his heart, only the desire to defuse the situation. The shift in the air was undeniable. It felt as if the world stood still for just a moment. Laughter faded, masking a profound truth. Jamal wasn't just fighting back with words. He fought with hope that could shatter even the strongest chains. As he stepped aside, letting Bradley's momentum carry him past, Jamal felt a profound sense of empowerment ripple throughout his body and the school community around him. See, Jamal called out, his voice strong, this is not about who's stronger but about all of us standing together. You don't have the power to control anyone, Bradley, not anymore. In that moment of clarity, Jamal knew something fundamental had changed. Shouts of unity from his friends echoed back through the crowd. He had sparked a transformation. But just when it seemed victory was palpable, Bradley's expression turned dark, and Jamal felt a chill run down his spine. You're going to regret this, Carter, Bradley warned, his voice low yet laced with uncertainty. All change begins with a single voice rising against injustice, and Jamal had ignited a chorus. As the weeks rolled into the promising warmth of spring, Jamal and his friends cultivated their movement at Westwood High, transforming a wave of defiance into a structured alliance. Their anti-bullying and self-defense club flourished, drawing in students from all grades. With every meeting, their numbers swelled, each new face a testament to the resilience blossoming in the shadows of bullying. The gym became a hive of activity. Students of all backgrounds united, practicing self-defense techniques alongside workshops on emotional empowerment and compassion. With Jamal at the helm, they explored the importance of vulnerability, bravery, and mutual respect. The room buzzed with new energy as people shared their stories, their struggles, and, most importantly, their aspirations for a kinder environment. Jamal felt invigorated by the transformation. It wasn't about fighting. It was about standing up for oneself and others, supporting one another rather than competing or putting each other down. As friendships deepened, laughter filled the gym, melding into an aura of positivity that slowly echoed beyond the club and into the wider school community. However, the shadow of Bradley remained. Every now and then, the flicker of his presence would surface. Jamal spotted him on the edge of the crowds, watching with a dark intensity. That lurking threat was both a reminder and a motivator. Jamal knew that the change they were trying to create would not come without challenges. One afternoon, after a particularly thrilling practice session, Jamal gathered his friends in a huddle as raw excitement pulsed through them. "We need to organize a school-wide rally," he said, passion igniting his words. "Let's show the whole school we stand together against bullying, and we can invite our community." "Absolutely. That'll make a statement," Sarah chimed in, her eyes gleaming. "We could include performances and speakers who share their experiences." As they brainstormed ideas, excitement ignited, and plans took shape. They each took on roles, delegating tasks from designing posters to coordinating activities. The buzz of anticipation filled the air, weaving a vision that began to feel tangible. As the rally day approached, Jamal and his friends worked tirelessly, the weight of their mission sighting heavily on their young shoulders. They sent out flyers, brought in local speakers, and reached out to community leaders who supported their cause. The enthusiasm and energy of the students fueled Jamal and his crew, yet beneath that excitement lay an undercurrent of psychological tension as well. The day before the rally arrived, and Jamal found himself awake in the late hours of the night, pacing his room as anxiety settled in. What if no one showed up? What if Bradley and his pack decided to sabotage everything? Doubts snaked through his mind, but he fought against them. Just then his phone buzzed, a message from Malik. "You're ready for this. Trust the community we've built. No matter what happens tomorrow, we'll stand together." Taking a deep breath, Jamal sank onto his bed, soaking in those words. No matter what happened, they had already sparked change. They were on the path. He returned to the following day, with resolve hardening within him. The morning of the rally dawned bright and clear, the sun painting the sky with vibrant colors. As Jamal arrived at school, he was met with a swirl of students gathering in anticipation. Huddling together and holding colorful banners, the atmosphere buzzed with energy and exuberance. The sight warmed his heart. As the time drew near, Jamal stood on stage alongside Sarah, Malik, and Lena. Each one bore the weight of hopes and dreams not just for themselves, but for all who had ever felt powerless. The crowd grew. Students filled the bleachers, eager faces looking up at them. It was a moment of reverence and unity, a culmination of their efforts. Then Jamal stepped forward, his voice resonating throughout the gym. "Welcome everyone. Today is not just a rally. It's a celebration of our strength, our unity, and a stand against bullying. Together, we create a safe space where we can all grow, learn, and stand strong." Cheers erupted around him. Students were on their feet, chanting slogans of friendship and solidarity. Laughter mixed with shouts as those stories were shared, each personal account weaving together a tapestry of resilience. As the presentations unfolded, Jamal caught sight of Bradley standing at the back edge of the crowd, flanked by a few of his friends. The scowl etched on his face was unmistakable, yet there was no hesitation now in Jamal's heart. Just moments ago, they had witnessed an array of empowered spirits, people coming together with bravery he once questioned existed. It occurred to him that change was already happening. Each clap, each cheer was a brick laid to fortify the walls they constructed against negativity. Even if Bradley acted out, they would all stand together, throwing their voices into the mix, jeering back against the shadows of fear. As the rally reached its emotional climax, Jamal felt buoyed by the tide of a connective spirit flourishing within that gym. In a spontaneous decision, he invited those who had been impacted by bullying to share their experiences. One by one, students stepped out of their comfort zones, voices strong as they recounted their truths and vulnerability. "Even if it scared me, I found my voice," shared a sophomore girl, and her words echoed with infectious empathy. "That's what it's all about," Jamal called out, pumping his fist in encouragement. And then, as he absorbed their stories, something brewed within him, a powerful wave cresting in this sea of unity. Feeling invigorated, he turned to the crowd, seeking out Bradley's expression. As he spoke, he felt an undeniable truth running through his veins. "Change is possible," Jamal declared, the energy in the room shifting into a current of hope and possibility. "We have to cultivate it together, because it starts with us. It starts with a choice to uplift each other, empower each other, and stand beside one another in our darkest moments." As the crowd surged collectively, their voices roared to life, a cacophony that wrapped around them like a warm embrace. As Jamal's call echoed into the air, he saw not just faces but sweat and tears, each person defining strength in their own way. They were shaping a tapestry against the backdrop of darkness Bradley represented. And then, to Jamal's surprise, Bradley stepped forward, caught in the whirlwind of emotions rising in the gym. There was uncertainty pooled in his eyes, mingled with anger, but there was a flicker of something else, something that resembled vulnerability. He was used to being in control, striking fear into the hearts of his peers. But today, the tides had turned. "Shut up, Carter," Bradley interrupted, voice strained. You think you're better than everyone because you have these people beside you? This all started as a joke, and now look at you. Jamal felt the air shift as the crowd tensed, unease settling in as they exchanged nervous glances. But Jamal stepped forward, standing firm against alertness, his heart thrumming with determination. It's not about being better. It's about understanding. We're not perfect, and neither are you. But we can choose to change, to support one another, rather than tear each other down. In that moment, it felt as if the crowd held its breath. Jamal could see the turmoil in Bradley's expression intensifying. The shift wasn't easy, and for all the bravado he'd wielded, perhaps Jamal had struck a chord deep inside. With one final boast of courage, Bradley looked around, his comrades seemingly uncertain whether to stand with him. Some scoffed at their leader's emotional turbulence, while a handful subtly began to retreat. The shift was palpable, and with arms trembling against the weight of honesty, Jamal stepped closer. You don't have to do this alone, Bradley, he said, vulnerability threading through his sympathetic tone. You can join us. We could help you too. The invitation hung in the air, rooted in compassion rather than disdain. Jamal knew it wouldn't be easy. Brady held a past laden with pride derived from hurt, but he had unwavering faith in the resilience of the human spirit. Perhaps here, in the middle of this chaotic yet transformative moment, they could bridge the divide. Under the weight of those words, Bradley stood still, the conflict in his face like a tempest brewing on the horizon. As the crowd waited, silent but laden with hope, a flicker of vulnerability softened his features ever so slightly. Bringing forth something unexpected, Jamal remembered the strength of the community behind him. The voices raised against fear, the ripple effect set into motion. If change was possible in him, it could be possible for Bradley too. With a heavy sigh, Bradley met Jamal's gaze, uncertainty playing across his features. Then, without uttering a word, he turned and walked away, retreating to the threshold of uncertainty and self-reflection. The breath of the crowd exploded in a mixture of shock and relief. The rally had become not just a moment of defiance, but a beacon of hope. Students began cheering, recognizing that compassionate conversations held the potential to shift narratives and empower even the hardest of hearts. As the rally wound to a close, Jamal couldn't help but smile. They had not only challenged the bullies, they had opened a door for understanding, igniting a pathway toward healing and change. This was the true essence of strength. Even if they faced future doubts and hurdles, they had glimpsed the enormity of their shared resolve. Standing tall amidst a sea of enthusiastic faces, Jamal knew that they had sparked something infinitely more powerful than they ever anticipated. With every step forward, they were reshaping their community, fostering kinship, courage, and resilience in the face of adversity. Together, they had begun to rewrite the narrative of Westwood High, and as brave as it was, the story was far from finished. ****, the end. ****.